Hey, I'm Dr. Patton, and I'm going to introduce you to SHS 367 language science, which you can also think about as psycholinguistics if you want to think about it that way. Okay, so this is a podcast based class, which is different, I suppose. The reason why I set it up this way is a lot of my online students are non-traditional students, like um, most of you are not just out of high school and coming to get your first degree. Some of you are returning um, to school. Some of you didn't go to college at that time in your life and you're going now. So you have other things like jobs and, your parents, and you have to deal with children and things like that. So I think a podcast based method of learning is a little bit more accessible for those students. Now, I know some of you are the traditional college student, and I don't know. I like podcasts. They're great to, if you don't have a reason why you couldn't just watch videos, podcasts are still nice. It changes things up a little bit. Videos are a little bit restrictive, right? You have to be at home to watch them. I mean, you could stream them on your phone, but it's a small screen. Sometimes you need to see what's going on. You can listen to these while you do housework or drive to work or any of that kind of stuff. The podcast is free. I have it up on something called Castbox, where you can listen to it just like a typical podcast. And it's also posted directly to Canvas. So if you don't want to download Castbox, you don't have to. If your phone won't download it for some reason, that's fine. You can also listen online on your computer. So there's a web browser version as well. And then, like I said, every podcast, every podcast lecture is also posted directly to Canvas. So you should be able to interact with it however you want. If you want to do it like a podcast on your phone and go for a run while you listen to the lecture, that's excellent. And if you can't or don't want to, you can open it up on Canvas. There are also transcripts. This is really good for some of you who may be hard of hearing. And also, some people just like to look through the transcripts once they're done listening to it. So if there was an area that you wanted to go back and check something that you missed, it's a lot quicker to use the transcripts than, to try to find exactly where you were in this like 45-minute podcast. So the transcripts are up on Canvas after you listen to the lecture or before if you want to, or you can follow along, however you want to do it. I will say this, you want to check the show notes before listening. Show notes are going to be on Canvas or on Castbox. I put it in both places, so depending on how you want to interact with the podcast, you can find the same show notes. Show notes are basically like images that I want to show you that I can't bring up because it's a podcast, so I want you to see these images before. You might not know what they are. I'll just have you look at them and then I'll reference them in the podcast. Sometimes they're just a paragraph or two of something that you might need to read because I'm going to reference that. And then once you're done listening, you can go back and look at those again once you have the pieces in mind to make sense of them. So this is actually really good. One of the things you're going to learn about is top-down and bottom-up processing. And so what's happening is that if you see an image, when you look at the show notes before you listen to it, that's bottom-up processing. You're taking in the information that's given to you by your senses, and you're trying to figure out, what is this? You're trying to reconstruct what this picture is, if it's like an illusion or something, or if you're thinking about this concept as a whole of like there's a concept that you're trying to learn and you get just this piece, you're trying to build the concept from the bottom up. When you look at the picture again after you've listened to the podcast, now that's top-down processing. You have a lot of information about the topic, and when you're looking at it, you can see if it's like some illusion or something, you're like, oh, that's what he's talking about. I see. So you have this information that's like changing how you're seeing this illusion. Or again, thinking about like a larger concept of something I want you to learn from a picture that's not an illusion. You have a lot of information about the concept, and now you see how the picture ties in. So there's your first lesson. Top-down, bottom-up processing. There are still PowerPoint slides to go along with each lecture. So if you want to look at the PowerPoint slides while you listen, that's great. And definitely you want to look at those PowerPoint slides for studying. So I would say absolutely check those out when you're studying, but you don't have to look at them while you're listening. Okay, so when you download CastBox, it's going to look like you have to pay for it. They recently changed their interface, and it makes it look like you have to subscribe. You don't. I chose CastBox because it's totally free and it's available on all platforms. So it's not like Apple Podcasts or something like that, or Spotify where you have to listen to commercials. None of that. It's free. There's no commercials, but like I said, it's going to look like you have to subscribe. So let me show you what it's going to look like. You're going to download it, and you're going to get this screen where it's going to say like, okay, great, you downloaded it. Let's go. You have to make an account, of course, just like everything. You can log in with Google or Facebook, or you can make an account just for this, whatever you want to do. Offline listening is going to download the podcasts, the last 3 podcasts, so that you can listen to them when you're offline. Again, this is a choice for you. The Not Now button is right above Continue. You do whatever you want. Now, here's the one that is ridiculous. Okay, so look at this. You're interacting with the bottom of the screen every time. Continue. Log in or sign in with Facebook. Continue or Not Now. And now, the only thing you have at the bottom is 3 days free trial or these other payment options. It looks like you have to subscribe. You do not. Right here is an X. You click on this, it goes away. I don't want you to, if you want to pay for it for some reason, go ahead. But I do not want you to think that you have to pay for this to listen to the podcast without ads. You don't. Click the X. Get the content for free. Okay. The other thing it's going to do is when you're on, I think it's after you click the X on this one, then it's going to be like, here's podcasts that we've selected for you that are popular. You can deselect them. If you don't want them like all over your feed, get rid of it. If you do want to try out podcasts, hey, I don't care. Podcasts are great. I can recommend some really excellent ones for you. In fact, I'll recommend some that if you really like this class, they'll kind of expand on topics that we learn here. One of those is the allusionist with an A, like an illusion, like an allusion, not an illusion. And the other one is called Lexicon Valley. Now, the problem with Lexicon Valley is there are a lot of episodes, years of episodes, under another title called Spectacular Vernacular. So you have to search for that. And then if you go back in the archives, there's 2 different eras of hosts that you'll be able to listen to. And then the current era, they changed the name to Spectacular Vernacular. The host before that moved to a different platform. I think you have to pay for that one, but he still does Lexicon Valley on a different area. So anyway, if you get into this and you really like linguistics and you really like all this interesting stuff, these are some other podcasts that you might like. Or you might hate podcasts. Maybe this sours your taste on podcasts, then you never want to listen to another one. That's fine. I like killing trends. Okay, so this slide always hits a little bit better in person for my in-person classes because most of you do not live in Arizona, but some of you do. So I was born in Mesa. That's a city in Arizona. It's right next to Tempe, which is where Arizona State University is. I graduated from Hamilton, which is in Chandler. That city also butts up against Tempe. And then I got my BS, my MA, and my PhD from ASU. So I've been here the whole time. The number of years that I've spent at ASU is, I think, more than half my life. Is that true? No, I'm not that old. Never mind. It's not more than half my life. But it's a considerable amount. Yeah. From 17 on, I was at ASU. Okay. And then the other thing is, I'm a runner. I like running. This is, before coronavirus. I think this was like a couple months before coronavirus. This was really fun. Love coffee also. That's what I can't go more than like 5 minutes without having some. So this was this was really fun. Before I got into the science aspect of my life, getting my PhD in cognitive science, which is sometimes also called cognitive psychology, I was an actor. This is a still from a film I was in. And then I went to a radio station. And this is a group of people from the radio station. I mean, I think obviously this is the sports guy. This was a music guy. She did news. And I did all the back-end production stuff, which is why I have cool audio-visual tools, which help out with the podcast classes and online classes and stuff like that. Anyway, let's talk about some research. So if you're taking any of my other online classes, I've already talked to you about this research, so you can skip ahead about 5 minutes. But if you haven't taken any other classes with me, I think this is really cool stuff. So one of the things that I'm researching right now is swear words, looking specifically at the vowel phoneme usage rates between swear words and other words, non-swear words in the English, in American English. And what you can see here is, if you look at the dark bars, those are swear words, usage rates of vowel phonemes, these vowel phonemes here. This is I. In swear words, and the light bar is non-swear words. And there's different rates for some phonemes, not all of them. But like, right here. You can't see it because my face is in the way, but there we go. So is used far more often in swear words than it is in non-swear words. And there's an interesting story about which is, if you've taken phonetics, you know that there is a schwa and an The schwa is the unstressed version of this sound. The is the stressed version of the sound. There are not very many schwas that show up in swear words at all. And so when you break apart into schwa and you see two different things going on. So this graph absolutely changes. It looks like in non-swear words, is used more often in non-swear words, like I said. But that's actually schwa. Schwa is used a lot, right? It's our default unstressed sound. When you look at stressed then it actually occurs that sound is used much more often in swear words than in non-swear words. So the two sounds that are used most often in swear words are and You can probably think of a couple examples of those. Is also used, but that's kind of like, like a baker, candlestick maker, mother, that kind of stuff. So the is just kind of like tacked on there because you're like, you're the one doing it. So I think it's just that one's just an accident. Okay. It's a vocational suffix, I guess. So the other thing that's really interesting is if you look at areas where sounds occur more often in non-swear words than swear words, a lot of these happen to be things like e and oo. And that's really interesting because a lot of the words that we direct at children, young children, or animals, pets, are E and oo. We like to end them with E and oo. Those sound more cute and soft and things like that. And those, if you graph this out in terms of a perceptual map of how these sounds are similar to one another, you get like a two-dimensional graph. And and are on one side, E and oo are on the other. So it looks like there's a continuum between these. And here's where swear words are, here's where kind of soft, fluffy type of words are. Now, what's really interesting about this is a lot of swear words that we have did not begin their life as swear words. They've actually become swear words over time. And so it's like we hear this bias exists in the language. Sounds gross. And so we're going to make that word move over to be more of a swear word. Now, I know crap is not really a swear word, but it's certainly not some polite conversation like you would use in a formal speech or something, right? But it did actually begin its life as totally neutral, and it ended up becoming somewhat more crass. Poop, same thing, began its life totally neutral. In fact, it was the word for flatulence originally. And then it became the word for excrement, but it's kind of a cutesy, babyish term for excrement. In a way, the opposite of crap. And this is true for a lot of other words that I'll go into, but like as your first day in class, I'm not going to use I'm not going to go into like R-rated words on the first day. I don't even think I go into, I don't think I use many, if you're worried about that, when we actually talk about this towards the end of class, but I will allude to them. Another piece of research that I'm doing is looking at this dun-dun drum, which is also called the Nigerian talking drum. This drum replicates speech. In this portion of Nigeria where the dun-dun is used most often, there's a language that's spoken called Yoruba. Now, Yoruba is a tonal language, which the tonal language that everybody knows is some dialects of Chinese, or I guess dialect isn't necessarily right, but maybe it is. Some dialects of Chinese, most of the popular ones are tonal. Vietnamese is also tonal, and other languages related to Yoruba and Yoruba are tonal as well. That makes it possible to replicate the sound of that language with an instrument. And this drum can actually change the frequency of how it sounds based on how tight you're holding it. So it'll go doom doom like that instead of just like a regular drum that's just bum 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 bum. So we investigated this to see how closely the two are matched. The frequency of speech, the pitch, I guess I could say, of speech. Frequency is the more scientific term, I suppose. And the intensity, the loudness of speech and the drum. And they mimic each other directly. It's fantastic. Our study is one of the first, I think it is the first that's looked at this kind of speech mimicry in this way. And it's kind of given birth to a couple more studies like it. So that was pretty fun. And then another thing that I do for research, which has like absolutely no relationship to speech and hearing in any way, is looking at something called tetrachromacy. Most of us have 3 cones in our eye to see color vision. If you're colorblind, you have 2 cones. There are people that have 4 cones, and they see color in a much different way than the rest of us. The research that I'm doing is finding a test to determine who has 4 cones without genetically testing them. That's how we know right now. That's the only way we have to show that people have the genotype for 4 cones. But having the genotype for 4 cones doesn't actually mean that you can see with 4 cones, because that you have the genotype for it. That doesn't mean you have an expressed phenotype. And even if you do have an expressed phenotype, if we could measure in the eye the presence of these cones, that doesn't mean that those cones are being used or processed by the brain as a fourth cone. So this all has to be done in like a perceptual way. And the test that I'm developing, me and other collaborators are developing, is something that doesn't require the genetic testing. It's just a behavioral test of like, do you see this? Kind of like those tests for color blindness where you see a number in a bunch of dots if you aren't colorblind. And if you are colorblind, it just looks like dots. So it's kind of like that. So that's really fun. That's such a cool area. This picture here is from a write-up in Psychology Today about this research. Okay. Oh, we're working with a Nobel Prize winner on that. So that's like, I mean, cool. Okay. Let's talk about how the class is set up. Our class is going to have 4 exams. The lowest exam is totally dropped. So we're going to break the class into 3. It's not really 3 modules. Each week is a module, but it's 3 groups of modules. And there's an exam at the end of each one of those. And then there's a cumulative final at the end. So that's 4 exams. Now the lowest one of those is dropped. It doesn't matter which one it is. It's dropped. It could be the cumulative final or your very first exam. Whichever one of those is the lowest goes away. What that means is that if you come in and your first exam is very bad, that's okay. You're not gonna, like, the rest of your semester does not have to be colored by this mistake in the first exam. It potentially can go away entirely, and then you can just focus on these other 3 exams. It also means that if you do really well on the first 3 exams, you can blow off the cumulative final. It would go in as a 0, but then that's your lowest score. So the lowest score would be dropped, and your exam score would be based on those first 3 exams that you took. So essentially, your lowest score is dropped. However you want to deal with that, totally up to you. There's also 8 quizzes. For each of these quizzes, you're going to have 2. Oh, okay, backtracking. Your exams are done in a lockdown browser. They're not open note. They're closed note. And you have to have your camera on, so there's a record of you taking this exam so we can see if there's cheating or anything like that going on. So it's like, a serious deal. Taking the exam is a serious deal. Now the quizzes, those are not lockdown browser. They're open note. You get 2 attempts to get all the right answers on them. What I want you to do is go through, since you have 2, the first time through, don't use your notes. Just take it like it's an exam and see what you know. See how you do. And then, once you know how you did, you click finish and you see it'll mark which questions you got wrong. Pull your notes out and make sure you get all the points for the quiz. Like, I want you to get full points for these quizzes, but I also want you to use it as a study aid to figure out what subjects, what points did you not understand as well. So that'll help you when you get to the exam. There's also a few different kinds of homeworks. These are things like, there's a couple discussion boards, but they're not the regular kinds of ones that are boring and lame. They're more fun. There's also a sentence diagramming thing. There's some hands-on research that you're going to be doing. And there's competitions that you can play with your family, which is always fun to show your uncle who is in charge. It's you. You'll beat him, stupid uncle. Okay. There are also some extra credit opportunities. I know that for sure there's going to be one. I have an honors student who is doing some research, and that is going to be a way that you can get your extra credit. Participate in the research. You'll get 3 points of extra credit. I have 2 honors students, but I'm not 100% sure if both of them are going to be ready to collect data while our class is going on. So there may be 2 experiments that you can participate in. And there could be more. But for each one, you'll get 3 points. And there could be some other extra credit things as well that are not research participation. Okay, so let's that's our class. That's how the class is going to be laid out. But now I want to tell you some things that might help you succeed in the future. So there's something called sales. I never remember what this stands for. Student accommodations in life. I don't know. Whatever. It used to be called the DRC. DRC stands for the Disability Resource Center. So that's essentially what sales is. I don't know the acronym, but that's basically what it is. You can visit them in person or digitally. I know most of you are not here in Arizona, or if you are here in Arizona, you're far away from Tempe. If you are in Tempe and you want to visit in person, you can. They can also make appointments on Zoom to meet with you. What I want you to do is, if you think that you could use some sort of accommodation, consider making an appointment with sales. So there's a lot of things that are obvious that you'll need accommodations for, like a broken leg. If you attend in person, you visit them and they can help get you around campus on a golf cart. Um, if you have vision impairments or hard of hearing, they're the people who are going to help you with that. But these are all obvious things. There are also issues that are not as obvious. Things like sometimes dyslexia can show up in a non-obvious way. Test anxiety, auditory processing disorder, even PTSD and things like that. So there are tests that the DRC or sales, I guess I should say sales, can administer if you feel like there's something that's keeping you from doing as well as you should be. Most years, I have at least one student who, comes back to me and says, like, I'm so glad you said something about this because it takes me hours to read one chapter in my textbook that's not that long. So I talked to sales. It turns out I'm dyslexic, and they have been, their whole life. It's just for them, it wasn't that huge barrier that it is for some people with dyslexia. They don't have it quite as bad, or they know, or they've taught themselves strategies unconsciously to deal with it. And so it doesn't show up the same way. They can read and understand, but it takes them a lot longer to do it. And so anyway, I've had people say I'm 22, I have dyslexia, I've had dyslexia forever, but I never knew it. And now that they know it, they can get accommodations for their classes to do better in their classes. And they can also start to do things in their life to help, counteract the dyslexia. There's specific fonts that are used to help dyslexics. They have kind of like a larger tail on the bottom, and then they get kind of wispy at the top. And for some reason, this helps enhance reading speed and concept retention for people with dyslexia. So anyway, it never hurts to find out, right? Because if you talk to sales, the only person who's going to know that you don't qualify for accommodations is you and the person who administered the test. That's it. It doesn't go to me. It doesn't go to any of your other instructors. It doesn't go to any of your peers. No one knows if you thought you had a problem and you didn't. It's not like anybody's going to think you're gaming the system. You literally have nothing to lose. And if you do qualify, I mean, this could totally turn around, your academic success. So if you feel like you're struggling and you feel like it's something kind of outside of your control, you might as well talk to sales. One other thing that I thought I had at the end of that, as the next slide, but I didn't, is campus health services. Now, again, if you live near Tempe, you can come, or any other ASU campus, you can go to campus health services as a student. If you are low income, you don't have insurance, there are ways that they can, waive the fees. There's fee waivers if you are low income. If you have to go somewhere, I would try there. Ask them before you go about the fee waivers to make sure that you're not going to have fees on your account. But at least it's something, somewhere you can go with a possibility of getting fees waived. The other thing is online. So for anyone, there are also behavioral health assistance that they have. So if you feel like you need to talk to somebody about some issues, that's something that they can connect you with. And that's done on Zoom, so you can do it anywhere. Um, they are pretty heavily booked right now. They have been since the pandemic started. So it could be a little while before you're able to actually talk to anybody, but I believe it's free. Um, and so if you need it, if you feel like you need it, go to Campus Health. I think it's ASU Campus Health. Just Google ASU Campus Health and make an appointment. Or ASU Behavioral Health might take you to a more specific web page, and make an appointment. And hopefully, if you're having problems, that'll at least help a little bit. So the goal, right, is to succeed in this class. Like I want to help. Hopefully, this is going to help you guys succeed. But it's also not an easy class. So that's why I want you to be able to be healthy and get the accommodations you need so you can learn the content. That's not always the easiest, but it's fun. I think you're going to like it. Okay. I will see you auditorially in a podcast for your first audio lecture. All right. Hopefully this is a great semester for all of us. I'm looking forward to it. And I'll talk to you soon.